What is behind the success of top real estate agents and mortgage lenders? What tactics, strategies, and lessons learned have they used to break through and achieve elite status? Top performing real estate and mortgage lenders from across the country answer these questions and so much more right here on Real Talk with Homes for Heroes. So get ready because we are about to get real. Now, here is your host of Real Talk with Homes for Heroes National Director, Abby Waltz.
Hey there, and welcome to episode 65 of Real Talk with Homes for Heroes. I am thrilled that you've decided to join us for this week's show, as it truly is an incredible one with so much wisdom and success strategies shared that can be applied not just to the mortgage and the real estate industry, but to so many other industries and professions out there. This week, I am joined by a long-standing top-producing mortgage specialist, Jamie Harrington, out of Hickory, North Carolina. Jamie has been in the mortgage industry for over 20 years and has been through the ebbs and flows of the business. She's seen the super high highs that we're currently seeing right now in September of 2020, and she's seen the low lows like the recession that hit back in 2008. All of which have afforded her an enormous opportunity to learn from the challenging times, but to also learn lessons that the good times have instilled too. It's hard for me to pick some key takeaways from this one, as there are so many to choose from, but here are just a few of my favorites. Jamie and I discussed the lessons she's learned through all of her experiences, not just the fluctuations in the industry, but what she's learned over these last 2 decades along her journey to becoming and staying a veteran top producer in the mortgage business. She shares things like how working your database or your sphere of influence, if you're a newbie, can produce 4 times the results as opposed to chasing the next new lead or the next best thing. How she learned to pivot quickly by taking the time to work on her business, not just in the daily grind each day, even during the really good times. She also gets candid about being open to getting feedback from your peers and your clients and what to do with that information, posing the question of, what do you think I'm a genius at, to others, and how you can use that to play to your strengths and hire to your weaknesses. And last but most definitely not least, she shares her thoughts on a very important lesson she has learned over the years: to not treat the good times like they'll last, but to treat them and your business like they won't. To really look at your lifestyle and ensure you're creating a lifestyle that can sustain the bad times too. At the end of the day, you don't want to feel as though you have to work to maintain the life you've built. That's not what it's all about. Oh, there are so many incredible tips and success strategies shared in this one. So put away your distractions, get your pen and paper out, and really listen. I know it will not only help you build your business, but it will help you create a fulfilling life. Let's get real with Jamie Harrington. Hey there, everyone, and welcome to Real Talk with Homes for Heroes, where each week I am joined by one of the nation's top producing real estate agents or mortgage professionals willing to share the secrets behind their success. Thank you so much for joining us and for spending some time together today. I know this is going to be an unbelievable conversation for you to be a part of. As you can see, I've already got my special guest on here, Jamie Harrington. I will introduce her in just a quick moment, but for those of you joining us on Zoom and are part of our live virtual audience, just a couple of quick housekeeping things for you. First and foremost, there's 2 different functions down in your control panel. The first one is the chat section. Honestly, I know Jamie personally. She is going to share some amazing wisdom with you guys. So if something really resonates with you, go ahead and type it in chat, share that with other people, share your takeaways, or if something that pops through and the conversation comes up and you just want to share the love, that's perfectly fine too. Use that chat section. The other one is the Q&A section. We'll incorporate your questions throughout the entire show. So go ahead and type those in and we'll get those questions answered by our very, very special guest. Without further ado, I've got Jamie Harrington with me. She is one of our top producing mortgage specialists out of Hickory, North Carolina. Jamie and I have known each other for almost a decade now, which I was looking back at that in my notes along the way with you and our relationship, and I can't believe it's been that long.
It doesn't seem like it, but time has gone by pretty fast. It's been a good decade.
Yeah, it's been an exciting ride with you, Jamie. Jamie's been, oh gosh, she's always been one of our top tier mortgage professionals for us. I know she was number 4 with us last year. She's closed out over 500 heroes. I know you've given back nearly $500,000 in hero rewards to your clients there. And you just do an outstanding job with us. You've received our Outstanding Service Award a couple of times too. And I know you're a member of our Affiliate Advisory Council. So I am so excited for you to take the time. I know you're slammed right now, Jamie. So thank you for joining us.
You are very welcome. Thank you, Abby, for having me. And I'm happy to share anything I can with all of our Homes for Heroes team. I know everybody's working really hard right now. It's actually even hard to get on a one more Zoom meeting. But hopefully, we can talk about some things that might be helpful to somebody.
Well, I know we've got a lot of great topics planned, but we'll see where the conversation takes us and what resonates with the audience for sure. But let's go ahead and just jump right in. You've been in the business for quite some time now. Tell me the story behind how you got to where you are today and a little bit about your past.
Okay, so I got into the mortgage industry as an accountant back in the late 80s, early 90s. Not as a mortgage originator, but as an accountant. I was doing audit work for some companies that ultimately got into the mortgage industry. So that forced me to learn the mortgage industry. So I actually started my own mortgage company in 1996. I'd never worked for a mortgage company. It just seemed like a good idea at the time, so I thought I would do it. Learned a lot of things the hard way, but I loved it. As soon as I began to study what the mortgage industry was and how it worked and what were brokers, who were bankers, it just really resonated with me, and I knew it was a career path that I would really enjoy. So I ultimately ended up selling my CPA firm 2 years later and to go full-time into the mortgage industry. That would have been in 1998 when I went full-time into the mortgage industry and did great. Everything was going great. Then we hit the recession. Things weren't so great then. Those were hard times. Our communities in my area really suffered during the recession. We were heavy in manufacturing, primarily furniture. A lot of that went away. It was just a really tough time. And so at that point, I began to think about, okay, how do I retool my business? Where is the market? What do I do to attract new customers? I'd always kept a database, but I really knew that I needed something fresh. I needed something that I could talk about other than loan programs and things like that. Nobody was interested. So someone told me about Homes for Heroes. And my first thought was, well, sounds like a good idea. Another one of those good ideas. Let me check into it. And initially, my thought was, this is just a good marketing tool. This is something that gives me something different to talk about. And at that point, I really had no concept of how powerful it really was. Nobody in my market knew anything about it. There was nothing there already to build on. It was fresh, which I liked that. That was good news for me. I needed something different. So I began to search out a Realtor partner. I'm not sure what the program does now, but at that time, we did have the opportunity to search out our own Realtor partner because nobody was very familiar with the program. And I got the right Realtor partner, Chris Geddes. I know most everybody knows Chris. Chris was an excellent fit. We worked well together. And the reason is Chris embraced the concept immediately, just like I did. We knew that it was something fresh and new, but we both ultimately learned that it was so much more than that. It was a way for us to love our work again, especially for me, because I've been in the industry for a while, and it was hard at that time. Wasn't a lot of fun. We saw a high level of foreclosures, community really suffering. So this was a fresh reboot for me, especially. I think Chris was fairly new in the industry at the time. So this gave him something to go out and introduce himself to the community. So we started working together through the Homes for Heroes program, and it's been a game changer ever since, because it's one thing to do what you're good at. And I think a lot of us in our professions, we know we're good at what we do. But it's something different to be good at it and to love it too, because then it's never work. And I know for me, I discovered that again. It was fresh for me again. I hope that it gave Chris the boost that he was looking for. And we still work together every week now, on helping our hero borrowers. So that's how I transitioned from being a bean counter to a mortgage person to a Homes for Heroes person, into doing what I do now and doing what we're both doing at a very high level. And just really grateful that Homes for Heroes came along at the time that it did. I didn't know what it was, and I know the first person that asked me about it was a firefighter, and I'm like, well, I don't know. I just know it's a program. We're going to save you some money. Congratulations, you're my first Homes for Heroes customer. And I just knew then I better start figuring this out. And then it kind of developed from that point. That's how we've reached 500 families now.
That's just crazy. I'm glad we came in at the right time. Usually that's how that works out, to kind of refuel and recharge you, if you will. But I know you talked about the recession, right? You had been in the business for 10 years, a little bit more than that at that time. And our industry is cyclical. So I think it's really important for us to sometimes look back upon our past, because it's going to hit again. So it might look a little bit different, but it is coming. So give me a few lessons learned that you came across during the time of the recession.
During the recession, we experienced a time of loss. It was lost business. It was losses of jobs, loss of homes. That was a time of loss, and that was really hard for a lot of people. It also was a big wake-up call, because whether, even in my case, having been in business for over 10 years in the mortgage industry, having been in the accounting business prior to that, with lots of business experience and exposure to a lot of different industries, you would think that someone with my background would have been completely prepared for a recession. Well, I wasn't. And of course, as it turns out, really nobody was very prepared for it. But it was a different time than what we have now. Abby, we're going through a really great challenge right now. It's just a different challenge. It's a challenge of growth and gain. I know that so many people in real estate and in the mortgage industry are just crazy busy. The mortgage industry in particular, at this moment, has about $10 trillion of customer demand. But we only have the capacity to do about 3.5 to 4 trillion per year. So we're understaffed and underprepared by about 2.5 times what the demand is, which is a scary place to be too. So we're facing a lot of challenges. They're different, but the result could be the same. So I think what I took away from the recession, even though it was really hard, it forced me out of my box. I was kind of comfy and sassy right where I was. The business was coming in. I was happy. Everything was going good. And then I went into my office one morning, and all I had was an email that had been sent out at 6 o'clock that morning that said my primary wholesale lender, which is where I brokered my loans at that time. I'm a mortgage banker now, I'm not a broker, but that's who I brokered my loans with. I just had nothing but an email that says effective at midnight the night before, they were out of business. So my entire pipeline overnight was gone. And I had even closed a loan the day before for this lady that had an adult handicapped child. And the attorney did not record the day before. They were going to do it that next day, the day I get this email. And guess what? Couldn't close it. It was never funded. So you talk about an experience. There was a lot of those situations that went on, not just for me, but for other people. And that was, I had to rechannel the way I think, the way that I marketed. Everything had to change at that point. And I had to learn quickly to readjust, to be very quick on my feet, to totally throw away every concept of everything that I had and begin to rethink, how do I shift gears quickly? What would I have done differently had I known this was coming? One of the things we have to remember, what we're experiencing right now with this high level of production, low inventory, demand 2.5 times greater than what we can support, this isn't real. This isn't normal average business. This is just a moment in time. So whether you're dealing with the recession and the loss of income, or whether you're dealing with exponential growth that you're not prepared for, that you can't support, it's still a problem. It's a way better problem to have than to wake up and your whole pipeline's gone. It's still a problem though. So I think what we have to be cautious of is it's so easy when you're busy and you're working and everybody wants your time and attention, and that feels really good, and you're kind of crazy, but it's still a positive, it's a positive moment. You still have to remember to stop and raise your head from your work and look around and think, okay, this is all great right now, but where are the problems? Where are those little sneaky problems that are hiding behind all the chaos, that when the dust settles, they're going to come back to bite me? What do I need to be doing today, despite all the work that I have? For example, are we doing our marketing? Are we still reaching out to our customer base? Are we so busy we're just transactional right now? We're no longer doing our relationship marketing. Those are the things that maybe you won't get an email one morning that says your whole pipeline's gone, but you may find out rates increased, job losses in your community. Anything could happen. And what are you doing to protect yourself from that? One of the things that I know from experience and also from my background is you don't live today with the level of income that I know a lot of people are bringing in right now. Don't live today as if this is normal. Live like you aren't making this kind of money, and adjust your budget as if it's not going to last. And then when you do wake up and you get that email that came in at midnight or at 6 o'clock in the morning, and it says, guess what, your pipeline's gone, you're going to be okay. You've saved, you haven't adjusted your lifestyle to make it something that's not long-term manageable. Those are the things that we have to be doing today, but we also need to be looking around and seeing what's happening in our community, and know how can we be prepared once this level of production returns to normal. And maybe it doesn't slow down. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe this lasts for the next 5 years. That's fantastic. If you live like it's not going to, then in 5 years, you're really better off. But let's just assume that it won't last. And how can you be prepared when it does slow down? What will you wish you had been doing now whenever it does slow down? And for me, it's making sure that I'm staying in front of my database, making sure they're still hearing from me. And when I say from me, it doesn't really have to be me. It might be an assistant. It might be my newsletter. It might be a postcard in the mail that somebody else did for me. What are you doing to let your customer base know that they're still important to you? And as long as you keep doing those things, or you delegate it, you hire somebody to do it for you, when we do return to whatever normal is going to look like, you'll still be whole, and you'll still be in good shape, and you'll still be financially healthy. And hopefully we don't all go crazy before that time gets here, because some days I kind of wonder if mentally if I'm going to make it. But that's just what I would say, having been through the recession and been in business for a long time. Just don't lose your perspective on what is normal and what is just a temporary phase.
Okay, so there was a lot covered in that, and I just want to make sure that we kind of drive home some of the wisdom that you just shared with everybody. First and foremost, a lot of stuff resonated with me, but one of the things that really stood out to me that you just shared was that you never want to have to work to support your lifestyle. And I think, at least going back for me, oh gosh, probably 20, 25 years ago. That was one of the things that a very wealthy individual once shared with me as my career was really starting to take off. And as the money was coming in, kind of like it is right now in this situation, is that you never want to lock yourself into a lifestyle that you don't feel you can support in bad times. And I think that's so incredibly important. And you and I, earlier we were on the call and we were talking about clients, right? Especially as mortgage professionals, we always coach and train people not to go make big purchases while they're going through the loan process. And I mean, it's always going to happen. Someone's going to do it. They buy a new car, they make a huge investment, whatever that may be. But I think it's really important for us to be able to take our own advice and make sure that we're investing in ourselves and the lifestyle that we want and that we can support in good and in bad times. So that mic drop on that one for you. Another thing that I took away from what you just said was what came out of the recession, right? We get so accustomed when times are good, which they are currently, and they were before back then, that we are just putting our heads down and we're working, you know, in the business that we're in, because it's continually coming. And when that comes to a close or slows down, at least in a little bit, I think it's important for us, even in the good times, to take a moment to take a step back and work on our business, right? You learned a ton, I'm sure, back in 2008, but you learned to pivot and to pinpoint issues and to adjust what you're doing. Now you were kind of shoved into the deep end with that one. But I think that's a really important thing for everybody to walk away with now. Like, look up, like you said, start working on your business and taking the time to spot those potential problems and make sure that on the other side of this epic influx in the industry that we're seeing, that you can still fix those issues. So that was a big takeaway that I just got from you too. And I want to kind of explore a little bit about what you mean by keep doing what it is that you're doing too. So I'm sure pre-2008, pre-recession, and then your business now and what's really important, what you're consistently doing. What did you pivot? What did you learn? What have you applied to your business now that, even though I know you're probably working insane hours and your business is through the roof right now, especially with what we're seeing in the industry, what's really important for you to keep doing right now that you don't want to drop the ball on?
There's two things that you mentioned that we can't lose focus on, and that is a commitment. Specifically today, we're talking about home street roads, but commitment on home street roads and how we reach our community and the consistency. Consistency is the key. Whether you're dealing with bad times or good times, you know, loan officers, real estate agents, we're typically entrepreneurial by nature, and because we are, we're highly attracted to the next big idea. And I'm not immune to it by any stretch, but I know from being around a lot of folks like me, we are very attracted to opportunities. And so we need it. Can you hear me, Abby?
Kind of. You're a little bit fuzzy. If you want to mute or just make sure that you've got the right mic on, sometimes it switches over.
Yeah. I'm not muted. I haven't changed the mic, so.
You sound like a robot, which is actually kind of fun and cool, but.
I like those lazy vibrates and that.
Yeah. Hang on real quick. Let me see. Do you want to just refresh and pop back in real quick?
Okay.
Lisa, I saw your comment as well. It was fuzzy for us too. So bear with us as we bring Jamie back in real quick, and we'll get her back up and going. She is absolutely spectacular and has so much information and great knowledge bombs to share. I don't want you guys to miss it. Okay, I see you're coming back in now, connected to audio. How about now? Oh, hang on.
Let me mute it. Now.
There you go. She's back, right?
I'm back. Can you hear me?
Perfect. Even better. All right.
Okay. Okay. What was the question?
You expect me to remember that?
We were
Oh.
talking about, consistency.
What's important for you
Okay.
to keep doing right now, even though your business is thriving?
Right. We were talking about committing and being consistent. And what I was saying is because, for whether you're talking about real estate agents or loan originators, we have to be entrepreneurial by nature because we all work on commission, which means that we're also easily distracted just in general. But we're easily distracted by shiny objects, by the next great marketing strategy or some cool technology that's supposed to be driving business. Those things, we're just naturally drawn to it. So I think we just have to be careful that I like to stop and think about, okay, what have I done that worked? What have I done that worked? Because sometimes we do things that work and they work so good that we don't have time to do them anymore. So then we quit doing them and then we're drawn to something else. But I try to be consistent. My number one goal is to be consistent in reaching my database. There's two types of marketing. You market to the folks that you don't know and maybe they don't know you. That's out, you're going out and trying to grab people and bring them in. But then the best marketing is to your customer base. So, that's your goose that lays golden eggs for you regularly, consistently, no matter what's happening with the economy, no matter what's going on. So that's the type of marketing that I spend the most time and attention on. If I'm going to spend money, I'll probably spend money on the outreach to the people that don't know me. I'm not going to spend a lot, but that's usually where the money gets spent. The time and attention, though, goes to managing and staying in front of that database. And that's where a lot of either my energy or my team's energy goes, because if you build a relationship, and all of my marketing is relationship based, if you build a relationship with those people, a lot of people think because you sold a house to somebody or you sold their house for them or you did a mortgage for them, now you officially have a relationship. That's not true. You just have a transaction. The relationship comes afterwards. But I try to begin building that relationship through the mortgage process with the little touches along the way as we're getting through it, because that's when you have their undivided attention. Once you close, you really don't have their undivided attention anymore. They're on the other things that's happening in their life. So I stay consistent, for example, with my monthly newsletter, with gifts that we send, maybe postcards. I try to send everybody a happy birthday email. And, granted, do I do all this? I don't do it. I write part of my newsletter, but I have a company that does it and mails it out and do all that for me. I spend money on that. My assistant, Michelle, she's fantastic. She makes sure that we get gifts out and things like that from time to time. There's still a gazillion more things that I wish that I could do, that I had time to do, if I had more time to think about it. But honestly, you don't have to do 15 different things to build a relationship with your past customers. The majority of my business now comes to me from somebody that I've either done business with or I've done business with a family or maybe a coworker. I don't really do a lot anymore as far as outbound, the types of marketing where you go out and grab people and try to get them to do business with you. I don't do that anymore. Granted, you could say it comes from the years in the industry, the experience, but even if you've only got a year or two in the business, you still have a database that you can market to, and that database will feed you for your entire career. And it all comes from being consistent with it. You can't be a one-hit wonder and think that now you have a relationship. I get phone calls from people and I'll ask them, well, who did your loan last time? And they're like, I don't know. I don't remember their name. Or I want to sell my house now. You have a real estate agent that you can recommend. And I'm like, well, what about the one that sold it to you to start with? I'm just curious because I know who I'm going to send them to. They don't remember these people. So clearly it was just a transaction. It wasn't a relationship. because then they've done nothing to continue on with that relationship. It's how people treat each other. It's how they get comfortable. You know, my newsletter is not a banker newsletter. It's not slick and shiny. It doesn't have a lot of statistics in it. It's very personal. Every time I do my newsletter each month, I try to think of it as writing a letter to a friend, just to let them know kind of what's going on. Maybe share some information, mortgage related, that they might be interested in. But clearly, if you see my newsletter, it's not the focus of it. It's just, my dog Freckles. Everybody knew Freckles. He was 14 years old, about 130 pounds. He's bigger than I am, and he thought he was little. So he would just lay all over me, and he was huge and funny and just a fantastic personality. So Freckles was my mascot in the newsletter for a long time. And we lost him in January. He passed away after 14 years. And of course, we have to put that in the newsletter, and we have to talk about it. And, you get a lot of response to things like that. And this newsletter, the last one, I'm writing about my grandparents and some of those stories. So, it's not about trying to sell people something all the time. It's just letting them know that you care about them. But, the fact is, we all are still selling. We are salespeople. And I kind of scratch my head and laugh when I hear people in our industries say, well, I'm not a salesperson. I'm here to serve my community and help people find homes. It's like, honey, you're a salesperson, because nobody has a job until somebody sells something. So it's an honorable profession, not as long as sales are done with honesty and integrity. Being a salesperson is something that you should embrace and be proud of, and hone your skills and learn how to do it well. Listening to people. I know some in our industry, they just want to get the transaction done, get the deal. But, a good salesperson that builds those long-term relationships, listen more than they talk. I want to learn, why do you want this house? Why do you want a house? What's going on in your life? Tell me about it, because I'm going to figure out what are their fears, and how do I help them get past the fear of whatever's going to hold them back from moving forward. And that way they stick with me, and I stick with them, and we get through it. And that's selling. Call it what you want to. It's selling. And you learn to perfect it, and then you build a database, and you stay in front of that database, and then you got all the business that you can handle, probably more.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a completely different approach for sure to being a sales person, right? It's a different mindset. And I think you had that shift way back when.
Way back.
Yeah, you were, I would assume, I didn't know you back then, but I assume you were still a people person. It's just, there's different techniques and strategies that you can employ as a salesperson to do your job better, to make people know that you care, right? But to also, like you just said, to help them achieve their goals and overcome their fears. Because more often than not, people are, believe it or not, afraid of being successful, afraid of actually achieving that goal. And if you can identify those fears and help them through it and help them achieve that goal, I think it is sales, but it's huge.
You know what I find interesting, that when it comes to selling and dealing with my customers and getting through the process, my sales personality is actually extroverted, but my natural personality is I'm more of an introvert, which is not unusual for an entrepreneurial person. And we're constantly being told that you got to go out and network, and you got to do all this stuff, or you're not going to be successful. I don't worry about that anymore. That used to really bother me, because I knew I wasn't a natural at those things. I never felt like I was very good at it, but I was very good at connecting on a one-on-one relationship with my customers. Well, guess who sends me the business? It's my customers. So I learned to forgive myself, because I'm naturally an introvert in other aspects of my life. I like being at home. I'm not a big fan of big crowds or anything like that. But when I'm dealing with my customers, I just love them. I love talking to them, and my personality comes out, and I can pull theirs out. But you take me out of that situation, and I'm actually pretty quiet and private. So I find that interesting, but I also find it find it to be a really healthy observation to know that that's okay. And if that's someone else's personality, let it be okay for you too. Don't feel like you have to do what all the professional sales presenters tell you you have to do. No, you don't. You got to be true to yourself and find the marketing strategies that fit your natural personality, and you'll never have to work as hard at it, and you won't have to do the things you don't enjoy. I mean, don't send me to a Chamber of Commerce event. I'm sorry, I'm just not going. I don't want to. I don't have to. So.
I love that. You and me are the same way on that front for sure. And you're still wildly successful and just focusing on your people and loving on your clients. Now, I want to take a deeper dive into this too, because we've talked about this in the past. You are all about getting personal, not just with your clients, but actually personally putting yourself out there in your newsletter, connecting with people on a deeper level and working your database, not drumming up new leads or new lead gen and all that kind of stuff. Now, I'm sure there's a few newbies on here that are just getting started in their career and they don't feel like they have a database to work. So first and foremost, let's go ahead and debunk veteran mortgage professionals that are extremely successful. Is it just because you have a database?
No. Guess what? There is attrition in your database. People move away. Somebody's sister-in-law starts being a mortgage person. Your database is always, you're going to be losing people all the time. It's just natural. I had to start somewhere. And I didn't start just with nurturing my database, although in the beginning, your database can be your family, your friends, your neighbors. It doesn't have to be people you've done business with. Coming from the accounting background, I reached out to other CPAs in the area to let them know what I was doing. They weren't my customers. They were not in my database. Well, guess what? I put them in my database. Involuntarily, they got put in my database. Back then, you could do things you can't do now. Other bankers, whether, if you're in the mortgage business or real estate business, there are other professions that are naturally compatible to what you do. Insurance agents, divorce attorneys, bankruptcy attorneys. Your database is really unlimited. If you think about it as just your past customers, and that might be pretty skimpy if you're new to your industry, but that's not where I started. I added all those people in that really had never done business with me. I've done lead gen activities, and some have been terrible. Some have been pretty good. Nothing I've ever done. And I've experimented with a lot of different things, especially pre-recession. I experimented with a lot of stuff on the internet. Believe it or not, that was still kind of new. Email marketing. I even did fax marketing. And nobody does that anymore. I think you remember because then they eliminated, you couldn't fax people without their permission. So you couldn't do fax marketing anymore, the old roll-up fax. So I've done about everything that I could think of. I've had free reports and newspaper ads. I've definitely done lots of different types of lead generation. And sometimes you do have to start somewhere. I've even kind of been the guinea pig for the company to try some of these online lead generation services through some of them I won't name because most of them are terrible. I volunteered, agreed to do it, used up so much of my time with very little return on it, real competitive. I don't recommend that, especially if you don't have a lot of money to spend. You're still better off, get some postcards, get some stamps, put gas in your car, good walking shoes, whatever you have to do. You're still better off to reach out to the people in your community and just ask for the business. People are way more apt to send you business just simply if you ask. Now, I realize that now it's a little bit harder because you can't get into everybody's business like you used to be able to. But I've done all those things, and I can tell you, spending money to bring business in the door was never as fruitful as the time and energy that I put into just, connecting with people and just asking for their business. You know, B&I chapters. B&I is kind of tough right now because of the rules with, you know, in-person attendance. But if you find that network of people that believe in you and support you, there's a lot more business out there to be had than what you might think. People just don't ask for it.
Absolutely. I think that's so important to really invest, whether you call it a database, whether you call it a sphere of influence, right? If you're brand new and you don't have a client database, if you will. I mean, there's statistics all over the place out there, but most of them say that you're 4 times better off with a return on investment in your clients and the people that know you in your sphere of influence, in your database, whatever it is that you want to call it, which said differently, you get, for every dollar that you spend, you get 4 out of it, right? If you're investing in that. And I think that's it's something that's overlooked. And I know a lot of the times, I'm sure as a veteran professional in the business, people just look at you and say, well, she's successful because she has so many past clients. And that's just not the case.
It's not fair, because a lot of people have been in the industry as long as I have, and I talk to them, they don't even have a database. They can't tell you whose loans they closed last year. They don't know. They didn't keep up with it. So just the fact that someone's been in the industry and has some success, that's an excuse for someone that doesn't want to do the work that it takes. I mean, basically, I've built my business not once, but 3 times, really, when you think about what all has happened in our industry. Granted, I didn't have to start from scratch after the first time, but I still had to try different things and test and see what my market was, you know, accepting of. And I've had failures. You know, I've done marketing campaigns that were expensive and they failed. You've got to experiment, but you can't just say, well, you've been in the business a long time. You know, I know people that's been in the business 20 years and they close 4 or 5 loans a month. And time doesn't make you successful unless you learn and continue to grow from it constantly, and constantly watching to see what's going on. And, you know, like you said, pivot. You got to be able to pivot really quick and easily. And for most people, that's really, really hard.
Yeah, definitely. So you touched on this, that you've had lessons learned throughout our cycles and what the industry has seen over the years. What would be something that you invested in that really, like, let's be honest, they don't always work out? What was a plunker for you? And then what was probably one of your best return on investments that you've had?
I would say probably the biggest bust was paying for lead generation through one of the very popular services that I probably shouldn't name, that was very expensive, like $1,500 a month. To me, that's a lot of money. And I stuck with the program more because I was asked to than anything, but I stuck with it for a good 6 months at least. And I think I actually closed 1 transaction, and it ate up so much of my time. I actually even ended up delegating it to an assistant because I just didn't want to bother with it anymore. That was really, I didn't need it. I didn't want it. It didn't work. It was just a waste of time. You know, they send these leads out to 15 people. You just have to be one person that they're calling. I definitely will never do that again. The one that's worked really well, I would think something that's always worked really well for me is my post-closing gift. We always send a post-closing gift, and we always ask for referrals. We always ask for a Zillow review. We ask for a Google review. I mean, I've gotten a lot of business just from my Zillow reviews that my customers put on there. So, I mean, that doesn't cost money. You have to ask, and sometimes you have to ask 2 or 3 times. But I always kind of prep people that we're going to be asking for a review. One thing that we do that I think has been very helpful, we do what's called a halfway survey. Because, you know, a lot of folks wait till they get to the end and then say, hey, how did it go for you? Is there anything we should have done better? And then it's done. maybe it'll help the next person, but it didn't help that person. So, and I don't do it. Michelle does it for me. But about half to 2/3 of the way through, she'll just call them and ask about 5 or 6 questions. How are things going? Is there anything we need to do better for you? Is there anything you have some anxiety about that, you need to talk to Jamie about? Will you refer your friends and family? And, we learned some things. We've learned that some people don't like to be told everything that's going on. They don't want to know how you make the sausage. And then there's other people, they get the exact same amount of communication as everybody else. And they say, well, I'm not hearing from you enough. I don't know what's going on. It's like, good grief. They're getting a phone call, they're getting an email, we're asking for stuff. But we've kind of learned that different people communicate at different levels, and we're learning to ask those questions sooner rather than after we get to the end. So, and again, that doesn't cost anything. Now, granted, I'm paying for help, but I need help anyway. So that's just another task that she can do. And then we all learn from it, and we learn how to better deal with people and how to better help ease their discomfort. So the things that have been the most successful for me have been the things that I have not spent much money on, sometimes none, sometimes just a little bit. I would say the number one thing is to first be prepared to spend the money to get help, because you won't do all the marketing. You won't make all the phone calls. You just will not do it. Don't tell yourself you will. Just don't do it. Hire somebody that's good on the phone and let them help you, because your customer really does not need to hear from you personally. They just need to know. If somebody calls you, Abby, and says, Michelle calls you and she says, hey, Abby, Jamie asked me to give you a call. Got a couple quick questions for you. You don't care that it was her instead of me. You just like that you got a phone call and somebody's working on your transaction, or somebody thought about you or whatever. I don't do much of it myself. The biggest, best investment has been getting help. And you can't wait too long to do it, because you'll damage your reputation, especially these days.
Yeah, you touched on this a little bit on both sides of the coin. One with lead gen and investing. You invested $9,000 and you got one transaction out of it. That would be a flop, I would consider.
That was a flop, definitely a big flop.
But that's monetizing, like just the money component. The other component of lead gen and new lead gen specifically, not working your sphere of influence in your database, is that it's time too. And you touch on this with getting help quickly, right? You need to monetize your time. How much is your time in a day worth? Where can you be investing your own time that's going to pay off dividends in the future? And then hire the stuff that's not making you necessarily that much, or isn't going to cost you that much from a time perspective, that can really put you over the edge. I think that's so smart.
One of the things I did last week, and I thought, man, I did not have time for this, but I'm part of a mastermind group, and we had it was a Zoom, the virtual get together, which is not my favorite, but it was what we had to do. But I stopped for the better part of 2 days, and it's a small group. So we had critique of each other. I got a lot of critique. It was painful, but I endured, and I've taken a lot away from it. So I'd also say invest in a mastermind group of some sort. What you're doing, Abby, is very helpful to so many people. You don't have to pay for an expensive group. Maybe you don't have the resources to pay for your own coach. Whatever you can do it. I mean, what you're doing is free. So anything that you can do to step away from the business, to learn from other people, and to hone your skills. One of the things that I took away from our group session is our presenter talked about the fact that everybody has some level of genius. There's something that you're really, really good at. You're a genius at certain things. So then we began to critique each other to figure out what is our genius. I'm still a little lost on what my genius might be. But the whole point was, what are you really good at? And once you identify that, which includes asking other people, they can see it better. I can see it in you, better than I can see it in myself. So I've had to ask other people. And until you've asked somebody, hey, what do you think I'm a genius at? I mean, you haven't been humbled because your responses might be kind of painful, like, well, I don't know of anything that you're a genius at. But the whole point was, what are you really good at? And then begin to narrow down your daily activities so that you're only working on the things that you are best at, and then get the help to do all those other things that you don't need to be doing yourself. And I got some pretty harsh critique myself over that because I don't have enough help to delegate everything that I should be delegating right now. So that's been a real hard, difficult problem for me pretty much all of this year. But, you know, we get through it and things will be okay. But, yeah, ask your friends and family, what do you think I'm really a genius at? And see what kind of answers you get.
Yeah, definitely. Knowing your strengths is huge. Hiring for your weaknesses is definitely another huge game changer for sure. But I love the fact that you're open to feedback. And I think that's so wildly important to growth and to becoming a true successful professional in your industry, and whatever industry that may be, is being open to that feedback, being open to those critiques, and figuring out and learning where you can improve. Not necessarily saying that you want to improve your weaknesses, but finding those strengths and then really mastering them quite well will help you succeed.
I say forget about the weaknesses. Just delegate that to somebody. Don't focus on that. I mean, you can waste so much time worrying over your weaknesses. Forget them. There's somebody else that has a strength where you're weak. Just let them do it. You know, the hardest thing for me, I'm a micromanager, control freak. I've had to learn to trust my team and let them do their job because they're way better at what they're doing than what I would be if I had to do it myself. But yet they depend on me to drive the business in because their income depends on it. So if I'm getting in the weeds and trying to do their job for them and telling them how they should be doing things, then I'm not driving business in, which hurts them. So you have to have some trust and let go of the weaknesses, because you can beat yourself up all day long at what you're not good at. Yeah. There's a long list of things that we're all not good at.
Absolutely. Focus on your strengths and play to those, but not just with yourself, with others. Be a good strength finder in others, and then move them into the seat that they're going to excel at with their own strengths is important too, for sure. We talk about GWC at our company, get it, want it, and have the capacity to do it, right? It's all about your strengths. Do they understand it? You know, do they actually want to do it? Does it play to their strengths and put them in their happy place? And then do they have the capacity, which right now in this industry, I think everybody is struggling with capacity at this point. So for sure. Great. Speaking of hiring, I've got a question quick here from Lisa. She is wondering, how would you recommend finding good help? This is a tough one because Lisa, we were talking about this before we started broadcasting this show. So any advice there, Jamie?
Lisa, that is an excellent question. And I wish I had a really good answer for you. From my experience, don't trust the resume. Interview someone definitely more than once. And one of the things that I've done that's helped me is I've let other people interview a potential candidate, because they can, you know, we're also desperate for help. I think we're vulnerable to hiring, you know, a body that could come in and maybe help a little bit. So we're prone to make bad hire decisions, especially as entrepreneurs. We're not really good at those kind of decisions. So I've learned to let other people do the interviews for me as well as my own interview, then get feedback from other people that you trust. Maybe not necessarily people that are invested in that decision, but somebody that has good interview skills that can pull out maybe some things that you would miss, and don't hire the first person that shows up.
Good.
And I hope you have better luck than I have, although I've got a great team right now. But Chris can tell you, I've been through some doozies to get to where I am right now.
Oh, that's funny. He is on here too. He said the closing this morning went really well. They have a new home.
Yay.
Yay. Yeah, that's hiring's a tough one, but I think the multiple interviews is really important and the multiple perspectives too, because like you said, your strengths are different than somebody else's. And especially if a team member is going to be working alongside them, not necessarily in the same role, but closely working with them, they can give some really good
I think
perspective.
it's important to have a really clear avatar of the person that you need to hire. Not just to hire somebody to bring in and let's figure out what they're going to do when they get here. Know what you're going to do with them when you find that right person. Clearly define what do they look like, not physically, but what are their skill sets? What will they be doing? Who will they be working with? Really get real granular as far as who you need to hire. Share that with your team and anybody else that's going to help you with the interviews so that everybody's clear on this is what we're looking for. Because I've done it wrong. I've just grabbed a warm body off the street because I needed some help. And that's just a disaster for everybody. Your team suffers, your production suffers, your systems and procedures are going to break down. So, look for that. Know what you're looking for before you start interviewing.
Yeah, it's tough to find someone that you don't know who that someone might look like when they walk through your door, for sure.
Exactly.
Oh, too funny. Well, I'm going to do a couple, if you're up for it, a couple of rapid fire questions for you.
Okay.
And then we'll open it back up to the audience as well. But go back in time with me. If you could go all the way back to when you first got into the mortgage industry, what piece of advice would you give yourself?
Trust my instincts. I never worked for another mortgage company. And when I got into the business, I had all these companies telling me what I should do, which was the same things everybody else was doing. And that's one of the decisions that I made that was right. I made a lot that were not. I trusted my instincts and I knew what fit me. And I would tell myself that again. Don't listen to the crowd. Whatever the crowd's doing, do the opposite.
Very good. I love that one, actually, especially with us as women. That can be the stuff that goes on in our heads and the conversation, like do away with that for
Clear
sure.
the head.
Yeah, for sure. What I know you, I'm pretty sure I know you as a bookworm. What's one of your favorite books?
Oh dear. I mean, obviously the scriptures, but as far as some good books, I love all of Dan Kennedy's books. He has a series of no BS books. There's a no BS direct marketing. There's no BS time management. That's it. That's the best one. No BS time management by Dan Kennedy. You better be thick-skinned when you read it because it's going to step on your toes. But that's a book I'd highly recommend.
I don't think I've read that one. It's
It's
going on my list for sure. And then last but not least, I don't know if it's this one or not, but what's your favorite room in your house?
kitchen.
Yeah.
I love to cook. Yeah, I love to cook.
Perfect. I'm coming over
Yep,
soon.
anytime. There's always something cooking, most of the time. So yeah, I love my kitchen. I love to cook, and I love the La Crusade cast iron cookware stuff. I got way too much of that. That's kind of my indulgence is my kitchen, and good healthy food. I cook pretty much organic, natural food.
Right up my alley. I am coming over.
Anytime.
As soon as we can start traveling again, quite easily, for sure. Do you have, before I kick it over to Q&A, do you have anything else that you want to share today?
Oh, we've talked about a lot. Just know that because I do focus a lot on database management and building those relationships. People think they make sound business decisions. They really make decisions based on their feelings and their emotions, and that's what relationships are built on is feelings. So people will make a decision really based on their feeling, and then they try to justify it with facts. So that's why it's so important to tap into people's feelings and understand them. And then you can deal with the facts, but you can't push facts on somebody when they're over here making emotional decisions. I think I told you the story about the veteran that I worked with the one time that it was just a really difficult transaction. We've all had them. you fix one problem and it just surfaces two more. And it was a tough situation. And at the end, I got frustrated with him. And at the end, I'm like, why did you want this house so bad? And it was just the fact that he was promised a service dog. And he had to have a house. He had to have a fenced-in backyard. And he desperately wanted the service dog. So it never was about the house. It was always about getting the service dog and having a safe place for him so that he could have it. And that was just, in being busy and being the heat of the moment, losing track of why I was doing what I was doing. It wasn't about me. It was always about the customer and why it was important to them. And that would have saved me from some frustration. It would have inspired me I was going to do the job anyway, but it would have inspired me to be more bought into it if I had taken the time to find out it wasn't a business decision, a factual decision. It was a decision made on feelings and emotion. And almost every single home purchase transaction is going to have that in there somewhere. You just got to figure out what it is.
Mm. Wow. Words of wisdom. Deal with the feelings before you push facts on them, for sure. And it saves headaches for everybody involved. I love that story, actually. It lights your fire too once you find out what they're motivated by.
Oh, you'll go through hell and high water when you know why it's so important to them.
Yeah.
And it's fun then.
Yeah.
It's a challenge. It's not a problem.
Absolutely. I love it. I love it. You've shared so much. I've got one more question before we quick cut out here. I'm not going to mention who this is from, but I'm sure you're going to be able to tell who it's from. But how important is it, especially from a Homes for Heroes perspective and just in the mortgage industry in general, how important is it to have a partner realtor or a partner lender if you're an agent together as a team, right? And then what's the best way to find that particular individual?
Having the right realtor lender partner relationship is key, because had I not been fortunate enough for Chris and I to be introduced to each other, we didn't really know each other that well. I had actually offered the Homes for Heroes opportunity to a different realtor who wasn't interested because she didn't want to give up any commissions. And she said, well, maybe Chris will do it. And I'm like, okay, I'll talk to Chris. Well, it just turned out.
Chris, earmuffs. I know you're on here.
He turned out to be perfect because we work well together and we both embrace the concept. Chris does his own marketing now and I do mine, but we cross-refer to each other. We're very protective over each other. We solve problems together. I don't think that I could have reached anywhere close to the level of success that I've had with Homes for Heroes had Chris not been my Homes for Heroes partner, because he's supported me. I've supported him. We don't see each other every day. We don't even necessarily talk every day, but we both trust that we're both in the background doing what we can to support one another. And we've done some marketing together, especially in the early years. We did a lot of stuff together, actually. So I think it's really hard to succeed when you don't get the right realtor partner. As far as finding one, you have to have somebody that really embraces the concept of the program, because, we do give up money. We do give benefits to the customer. We are sacrificing some of our hard-earned money for what we do. So it has to be somebody that embraces the concept, that you work well together, that you can trust. I've seen other mortgage people that I've introduced to the program, I've seen them get matched up to a real estate agent that they were not compatible with. And I don't think either one was very happy in the program. I don't think either one was very successful. The realtor had their preferences, the loan officer had their preferences of real estate agents, and they just couldn't find common ground. I work with other real estate agents besides Chris. Chris works with other mortgage people besides me. But when it comes to Homes for Heroes, we're very, very loyal to each other. I think we're loyal to each other outside of those Homes for Heroes transactions. But if you can't be loyal, especially within a Homes for Heroes transaction, then you don't really have a partner in it anyway. You just got stuck with somebody. I don't want to be stuck with somebody.
Yeah, definitely. For sure. Well, Jamie, honestly, guys, if you don't have key takeaways from this and learned a couple of lessons that you can apply to your business, clearly you haven't been listening, or maybe you're multitasking. I don't know, but this has been amazing. It's always energizing to talk to you. You always have such a fresh perspective, and you're always just real and authentic and open about it. And I really appreciate that about you, and appreciate all that you do for our heroes for sure. We could not be who we are today without you, and Chris and everybody that you work with down there in North Carolina. So thank you so much for your time, Jamie. I really appreciate you being on the show today.
You're very welcome. Thank you, Abby.
Yep. Thanks everybody else for joining us. Join us next week for another episode of Real Talk with Homes for Heroes. See you next week.
Bye-bye.